Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. It is Thursday, July 2nd, 2026. A day Mark Carney says is historic. I guess we'll see. Maybe later tonight. He was out in British Columbia earlier today announcing the details of a memorandum of understanding that both the Prime Minister and the Premier of British Columbia say will transform the Canadian economy. And it's all related, of course, to energy, Alberta pipeline project in Alberta. The Premier there asked about all of that earlier today. They also have an MOU that they have signed with the federal government. It looks like, letting the cat out of the bag, I guess, that Alberta will move ahead in some fashion with a pipeline project, even though there isn't a private investor stepping forward to get this project started. That seems to be where it is all going tonight. And there is going to be an announcement, I believe, within the next hour. We will try to pick up the feed. I'm making efforts here to get a link to that set up so that we can bring that to you live when it happens in, well, I think, in less than an hour now. So that will be 8 p.m., I think, Eastern time here in Canada. It'll happen out in British Columbia. I think Mark Carney will be there for that. That's the word that we have here. But with him having been in British Columbia earlier today, not sure. I think he has enough time to get from one to the other, because this announcement with David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, coming earlier today, much earlier. This is not live, obviously. And what else can I tell you? This is a, well, I guess the major thing to take away with regard to the pipeline from the announcement earlier today in BC is that the ban on oil tankers in northern BC along the northern BC coastline will remain in place. That means whatever happens with a pipeline project will need to have will have to end somewhere further south. I don't know if that means that pipeline will be going down into the States and across, or if it's hard to say exactly what. No way to know, because it's all mum's the word, except that it isn't, because a lot of the information is already leaking out. But the pathway that this pipeline might take, that's still up in the air. And I think we might find out more about that in short order. But here's what Carney had to say earlier today.
This is a historic day. And yesterday, across this great land, we were celebrating Canada Day, and today we're celebrating Canada Strong Day. Because in a more dangerous and divided world, our strategy has been and continues to be to focus on what we can control, building our strength here at home and diversifying our partnerships abroad. And today, a series of initiatives we're going to announce, anchored here in British Columbia. We will catalyze, through these initiatives, over $200 billion in new investment, while advancing our trade agenda across Asia. In all cases, British Columbia is the linchpin, the gateway to a more prosperous, more sustainable, and a more inclusive Canada. And I want to thank you, Premier Eby, for your leadership in making this possible, and that of your colleagues who are here this morning.
Le monde devenu plus dangereux et divisé. Le système commercial mondial.
So what we're talking about here is about, I think it's $200 billion in investments in total out in BC alone.
La bonne nouvelle, c'est que le Canada a des solutions.
Let me,
Just
here we go.
7 leaders called on Canada to provide the reliable energy that the world needs, and will do so sustainably and inclusively. The Premier is just back from China, opening new opportunities for BC businesses. Today, President Marcos of the Philippines, Premier and I will join him. President Marcos is here beginning a state visit that will deepen our economic and security and cultural ties with the Philippines and, given his presidency of ASEAN, across the 500 million residents of the ASEAN countries. But to seize these opportunities, Canada has to do things differently. We need to move faster, we need to build bigger, and we need to work together. We have to be ambitious and build sustainably and inclusively. British Columbia is Canada's gateway to the world's fastest growing markets. British Columbia's power grid produces amongst the cleanest and most reliable, affordable electricity in North America. BC is a leader in mining, production of gold, zinc, copper, and well beyond. This great province has one of the world's most educated and skilled populations. And so it's on that exceptional foundation that Premier Eby and I are committed to build a stronger, more resilient, more independent province and country. Now, already it's the case that 1/3 of the initiatives that are advancing through the Major Projects Office come from BC. But today we're accelerating and broadening that momentum. Premier Eby and I are announcing a landmark Canada-British Columbia Cooperative Prosperity Agreement. This agreement is comprehensive, it's ambitious, and it will help transform the entire Canadian economy. So it's not just about one province, the entire Canadian economy, and will help fund the public services on which Canadians rely. C'est un plan.
Okay, so this again is, well, these are major developments on this proposed new oil pipeline from Alberta to British Columbia, BC's west coast. Federal and provincial leaders making this coordinated announcement today aimed at advancing the project while still addressing environmental and provincial concerns. As I said, the tanker ban will remain in place. We know that for sure. That's a red line, I guess, for BC. So this is a multi-billion-dollar memorandum of understanding. The deal should unlock more than $200 billion in investments across British Columbia, including support for liquid natural gas projects and port infrastructure. We have the key elements here, including the maintaining this long-standing tanker ban. First and foremost, that's, as I say, a red line for BC. And the Premier, David Eby, says British Columbia is not going to fight any federal decision on a southern pipeline route in court. So northern coastline off limits, but if they go south, the province, it looks like, will not stand in the way of either Alberta or the federal government. Now, while all this is going on, Alberta is moving forward with its proposal. The Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, her government has submitted, or is kind of finalizing at this moment, a plan for a $1 million barrel per day, oil pipeline to the Federal Major Projects Office for designation as a project of national interest. And that is, I think, what we're going to hear about in now less than 45 minutes, if they're on schedule and if we can get the feed. So we're actively endeavoring to make that happen. And as I said, it doesn't look like there's a private investor who has come forward at this point, but Alberta, we're told, is going to act as the initial proponent in this, and the pipeline ultimately would be built, or will be built and financed by the private sector, though, with Indigenous co-ownership and economic benefits built into the whole deal. And it's possible, I guess, at some point that the private sector will come forward with some sort of contribution or investment in this as it progresses. But to get this thing started, because everything is so uncertain, especially in the face of the separatism movement, 51st state talk, the tariffs, on, and a lot of this instability and is coming from the White House. So it's a huge challenge to attract investment. And then on top of that, you have this long history of I would say probably overregulation from the federal government in Canada, and environmental groups opposing pipeline construction, standing in the way, blockading all of that. And then you have, political interests that are difficult to read sometimes, most of the time, because they often do one thing that doesn't make sense in order to achieve a different objective, because politics is a sort of a covert blood sport. So we'll see. And I think this news conference will happen in Calgary. Both the Premier, Danielle Smith, and the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, expected to take part in all of that. So this whole thing is part of this broader effort to diversify Canadian energy exports away from the U.S. market and get the oil to the West Coast so that it can be sold to Asian markets more effectively and efficiently. So this is all tied to progress on Alberta's Pathways carbon capture project and full Indigenous consultation. And on both of those points, I think we will get serious details tonight. I'm hopeful that it will provide serious details and not just end up being some sort of window dressing or political announcement made for political purposes without any actual momentum or sincerity behind it. Here's the Premier, David Eby of BC.
Today is a big day for Canada. It's a big day for British Columbia. Together, we have secured a landmark, generational, multi-billion-dollar agreement with the federal government that sets BC on a trajectory, a generational path to prosperity. The Canada-British Columbia Cooperative Prosperity Agreement is about building the kind of country we want, the kind of province we want, and BC's future, not just today, but for generations to come. It's all about leveraging our strengths in this province to deliver real benefits for British Columbians. It means more good jobs for workers in this province. It means more opportunities to train for better pay. It means faster commutes for people as we build critical infrastructure for the future of this province. It means less pollution as we build with clean BC electricity. And it means the kind of shared prosperity that supports strong public services, not just in this province, but right across the country. And we're doing all of this while protecting the beautiful places that make this province so remarkable. I am very proud to say that through our discussions and negotiations with the federal government, we have secured a commitment to keep the Northern Tanker Ban firmly in place, protecting British Columbia's pristine northern coast and the $2 billion plus economy that relies on it. This agreement recognizes the role that BC will play in building a stronger, more independent nation. At the heart of this agreement is a significant multi-billion-dollar federal investment in British Columbia, including a major new investment in the North Coast transmission line, $3.5 billion in net benefit for BC Hydro ratepayers, hundreds of millions of dollars in critical support for the Red Chris mine expansion, and up to $3 billion towards the Massey Tunnel Replacement Project. Taken together, these projects don't just strengthen our economy, don't just support good jobs, they also build the crucial infrastructure that our country will need going forward. The North Coast Transmission Line, for example, will help power growth with clean, affordable, made-in-BC electricity, leveraging our advantages over other jurisdictions around the world. Red Chris is going to help strengthen Canada's critical minerals sector at a time when the world is looking to us for a stable supply of those metals and minerals. And the Massey Tunnel replacement will improve a critical transportation corridor that people rely on every single day. This agreement also advances commitments to workforce training, childcare, unionized labor, and watershed protection. Because building a stronger economy means investing in people and protecting the places we depend on. Now, our government is going to continue discussions on federal support to build on BC's natural resource strengths through a newly established implementation committee. This committee has firm deadlines that we will work to hit together on key projects. This includes, as the Prime Minister mentioned, a federal commitment to delivering additional port infrastructure and additional support for our hard-hit forest sector and steel sectors as a result of the impact of U.S. tariffs. In an increasingly uncertain world, British Columbia can help deliver the critical materials that people need, that trusted allies need, from a stable and reliable partner, and I can assure you that was part of my conversations in every single trade mission to date, whether in Asia or anywhere else. With some of the lowest carbon LNG in the world, we can help support energy security while reducing global emissions and creating opportunities for British Columbians. Now, there's one piece that I want to be clear about. This agreement doesn't require us to support any pipeline proposal from Alberta. However, as I've said before, we recognize our constitutional position, and we do not have the authority to stop a new pipeline. We will not be going to court to fight a pipeline project. Instead, we will ensure we fulfill our constitutional obligations in good faith. Pipelines are federal jurisdiction. That's why this agreement matters. It ensures that the Northern tanker ban stays in place, and it ensures that if a pipeline goes ahead, that British Columbians are fairly compensated for the environmental risks we would take on any new pipeline project. The projects that are moving forward in BC are about more than just infrastructure. It's about good jobs. It's about stronger communities. It's about cleaner growth. It's about building a future where people and families can thrive in our province. This agreement, without doubt, and I appreciate it, is a strong vote of confidence in the role that British Columbia will play in driving forward this new Canadian vision of the Prime Minister's and of so many Canadians about the role that our country can play. Over the next 3 years, our province is poised to deliver more than $88 billion in new major projects. That is an enormous opportunity for our province and for Canada. At a time of global uncertainty, Canada needs reliable trading partners, stronger infrastructure, and new sources of economic growth, and BC will help with all of those efforts. By securing our fair share through this agreement, we're putting ourselves in a stronger position to support economic growth and improve the public services that everybody counts on. This partnership shows what is possible when governments work together and focus on improving people's lives.
So that is that's serious money, and it does sound like progress is being made. Of course, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party in Canada, for our American viewers who maybe are not aware, this is the guy who is the leader of the official opposition out in Camrose, Alberta, just a short time ago. I have not had time to review what he has said, but I can pretty much predict, and I will, that he will say that this is just a bunch of hot air, that it's these are announcements with nothing real behind them. This is all going to be political somehow. That's what he has generally been saying. Only time will tell who ends up being right on this, or where the real integrity is. Here's Poilievre, and of course, this is all happening before the big announcement in about a half an hour.
C'est comme ça qu'on va réinstaurer la promesse du Canada. Et c'est ça notre mission. Thank you again. It is our mission as Conservatives to restore the promise of this country. Conservatives have three priorities: affordability, affordability, affordability. And what we're hearing far and wide is Canadians cannot afford to live after 11 years of this Liberal government, particularly to eat. Food prices are rising faster in Canada than in any other G7 country. And that's in part because of Liberal taxes right up and down the food chain. They brought in an industrial carbon tax on fertilizer, farm equipment, and food processing. There's a new renamed carbon tax they call the fuel standard, raising gas prices yet another 7 cents a liter. And they have inflationary spending that destroys the purchasing power of our money. That and the weak loonie are all driving up your grocery prices, and those are all the results of Mark Carney's policies. He promised he was going to reverse everything he said and did, and his party had done in the prior 10 years, but it was all an illusion. After a year and a half of Mark Carney, it is more costs, more debt, more handouts to the club of liberal insiders, power brokers, and insiders, but nothing for the Canadian people. Today, we understand that Mark Carney will hold another announcement in Alberta regarding a potential future pipeline. To start with, let me congratulate the great Danielle Smith for continuing to fight for Alberta and its oil and gas sector. She's been up against a lot. The Liberal Party, at the instigation of their then economic advisor, Mark Carney, waged all-out war on our oil and gas sector for over 10 years. Mark Carney tries to distance himself from those policies in his rhetoric, but the reality is that he was the worldwide champion of it. He was the head of the UN agency seeking to shut down oil and gas. He was the head of a banking alliance seeking to defund the oil and gas sector. He advised Trudeau that the carbon tax needed to be bigger and broader. He opposed the Northern Gateway pipeline, which would be delivering 500,000 barrels of oil to the West Coast today, had the Liberals not killed it. And so now he claims that he's changed his mind, that he was wrong all along. Well, if that's the case, then why hasn't he eliminated C-69, the anti-development law? Why hasn't he eliminated the ban on shipping oil off the northwest coast of British Columbia? And why is he going ahead with a 500% increase in the industrial carbon tax? A tax that will not only drive up the cost of food and homes, but will drive billions of dollars out of our country, south of the border, where they pay no carbon tax whatsoever. We don't need more taxes. We need more affordable prices for industry and people. And we know that the consequences of these policies have been to make Canada more expensive. Food prices rising over 4%, the fastest in the G7. They've been doubled since Carney took office. Rents are up 3.5%. Gas prices have been up 33%. And even if you exclude gasoline, which has been affected by the war, we see prices are rising for everything else. This Prime Minister has doubled our deficit, increased the tax burden on energy, and doubled down on the policies that the Liberals have brought forward. Today in British Columbia, we got startling news that Mark Carney is going ahead with his condo bailout. This is a handout for donor developers and other Liberal insiders. At a time when Canadians cannot afford a home, they're being forced to pay through their taxes so that Carney's condo developer friends don't have to take a price reduction on the sale of their exorbitant condos. So the same young people who can't afford homes will have to compete with their own tax dollars to place bids on those empty condos. Conservatives have the solution, which is for the government to get out of the way, let the condo developers lower the prices so that Canadians can afford to buy those condos on the open market. It's called the free market, and it works. So today we will be watching with the interest as more details come out. But we have a solution also to get pipelines built and other projects built, and they are very simple. Get the federal government out of the way. Get the government out of the way and repeal the industrial carbon tax. Get the government out of the way, repeal the anti-development laws, C-69. Get the government out of the way and allow shipping of oil off the northwest coast of BC. Get the government out of the way and permit a pipeline immediately upon receiving the path and the proposal from Premier Danielle Smith. By getting out of the way, we can allow builders to build, investors to invest, and workers to work. We've got to get away from Mark Carney's approach, which Ronald Reagan described as that if a Liberal sees something that moves, they tax it. If it keeps moving, they regulate it. And when it stops moving, they subsidize it. Why not just get out of the way and let it move? We don't need politicians to get in the way. Politicians don't build pipelines, they block pipelines. And our approach is we want an economy based on low taxes, fast permits, and free enterprise, not an economy based on handouts, bailouts, and carve-outs for the Liberal club. We want a meritocracy, not an aristocracy. We want a country where hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home on a safe street with affordable, delicious food on your table every night. That's something to be excited about. That's the hope we're fighting for. Thank you very much, and keep the fight alive. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from reporters. Please identify yourself and your outlet.
Scott Mitchell with Stingray Radio. I know you've been touring around to the various communities in the constituency here over the last day or so. What have you been hearing from the farmers in particular with this record rainfall that we've gotten and the absolute insane flooding, just how it's impacting them now?
Yes, great question. In fact, I'm headed off to Tofield after this press conference where they've had some terrible flooding. I've already been on the phone with the Reeve and some of the other local representatives. Damien Currick, the former member of Parliament, hopefully future member of Parliament, is actively engaged and has been giving me regular briefings. And so they've been telling me that, like, it depends where they are. Tofield is really bad, extremely bad. But in other places, they're saying that if they get some heat units in the next 3 or 4 weeks, then the saturated soils could really blossom some incredible crops. So it really does, when you're asking me what they're saying, that's what they're saying. I was also reminding them that our approach is to get rid of all gas taxes for the rest of the year to save 25 cents a liter, 20 bucks a fill up for a truck. Obviously, they all drive trucks, and about $1,200 between now and Christmas. And they thought that was a big help because, of course, one of the biggest costs for farming is fuel. So let's get those fuel prices down so that farmers can farm affordably. I'll have more to tell you when I'm finished meeting with the Tofield residents in a couple hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Aidan Sheikh, Canberra's Booster. Now, you've been our MP for almost a year now. What is one of the biggest concerns that you hear from our constituents, and what are you doing about it?
Well, I would say the overall concern is affordability. People are working harder and harder, but they just can't make it. Young people are struggling to buy homes. Houses used to be really cheap in rural Alberta. You could buy a really nice house for $150,000. Now they've more than doubled. So the youth think they ask themselves, how long will I have to save up to buy a home? Produce is really expensive at the grocery store. So a lot of mothers are saying that they've had to downgrade the diets of their kids. Seniors are cutting back on what they can afford to eat. And of course, fuel prices have been high, partly because our dollar is so low, and that hurts rural people more than anyone because, of course, they've got longer distances to drive, and the goods they buy have to come longer distances to get here. So I would say the number one overall, our overarching concern is affordability, and that's why I've made affordability our top 3 conservative priorities.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Bonjour Monsieur Poilievre, une question en français s'il vous plaît, Mathéo Delatte, Radio-Canada.
Merci.
Est-ce que la formule du pipeline...
Okay. Also earlier today, Premier Smith out in Alberta also has to weigh in on this. And I think I have the clip here ahead of the big news conference coming up. Yeah. I believe it's right here. Let me get it for you. And so, yeah, I think, you know, the what we just heard from Poilievre, predictable. And this predictable as well.
My follow-up, I'll see you in a couple hours, and I might ask this again, but
I might answer you in a couple hours, Tim.
I know what I'm going to do right now, tanker ban's still in place. There's the Roberts Port expansion that's been announced. Is it safe to say that your government's backing off a northern route and just wants to do the pipeline south?
I would say it's fair to say that the federal government and Alberta and the Pathways group are going to have a pretty exciting announcement at 6 o'clock today. And so the Canada and Alberta have come to an agreement that is mutually satisfactory. And so you'll hear a bit more about that later today.
I could have written that one for you.
You knew.
All right, we'll head over to the phone lines. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Your first question comes from Megan Patkins with The Logic. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yes. Thank you for taking my question. I guess one of the things that was interesting as well about this announcement is that there is a big ownership change here signaled for Greenlight. Morgan Stanley's infrastructure partners has replaced, I think, the pension fund that was previously Pembina's big partner. What is that signal? I'm curious. I'd be interested to hear from either Scott Burrows or the Premier about what this is signaling about interest either in Alberta's ability to answer this huge demand for power to fuel these AI data centers. What does it say that there's now a major U.S. backer of this project?
Yeah, so this is Andrew Plant, CEO of Kineticor, talking. So when we started this development of this project a number of years ago, and OP Trust is an investor in our Cascade project as well, the world that you develop power plants in and how you develop power plants has changed, and the capital requirements have got a lot more significant. So the change of ownership from the investment standpoint here was just a logical progression of one party's change, and then obviously the capital requirements that it takes to build a power plant today versus even 5 years ago has got significantly larger. So we wouldn't say there was anything different than one capital provider cycling out and a new capital provider cycling in based on investment thesis and size.
And I might just comment that this is the reason why we knew that the regulatory changes that we signed with the federal government on our MOU were so important. What we wanted to do was to give private sector confidence that they could invest in our market again, because these kinds of projects require a lot of capital, and you just simply can't have governments build every single project of need and national interest. And so having a private sector company with multiple backers realize that this is a good place to invest that sends a very positive signal to others who might be wanting to invest here.
Can I jump in with a follow-up here?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
So like Greenlight, in the announcement it says Greenlight could eventually double to 1.8 gigawatts. I'm curious if that expansion is contingent on the existing customer that's aligned for this project increasing its demand, or is that figure about discussions with additional hyperscalers or potential customers for Greenlight?
Yeah, so Greenlight, this is the first phase of a two-phase development. It's permitted for 1,800 plus megawatts. This first phase being 932 is half of the size. The second phase is permitted and ready to go and will be available to help support other data centers that could be looking to come into the province to support general economic load growth in the province or support the power grid. So based on the intent and requirements of the electricity sector, we will be able to look for a way to commercialize this. But this would be one of the most progressed large-scale power developments available in the province.
Thank you. We have time for one or two more questions. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
The next question comes from the line of Jean-Emmanuel Fortier with Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Premier. Thanks for taking my question. Just to jump back on Tim's question, I appreciate, of course, we're all waiting for the big announcement later on, but broadly, can you just talk a bit about the negotiations with the federal government and the change of tone as well that led, and you mentioned, for scrapping the electricity regs, but also, of course, the pipeline route. And if you can talk a bit about compromise and these negotiations, how it went the last few months. Thank you.
Well, I can speak generally about it. I saw the Prime Minister's video a couple of days ago, and I think he explained his own thinking about why it is that he's taking a departure from the terrible policies that were in place by his predecessors since 2015. And I think this is an example that when we're moving into a world where affordability is a major issue, where energy underpins the cost of everything, and where consumers are feeling the pinch of it, you have to respond to that. And that was one of the things that we've been advocating for 3.5 years, especially when in this particular announcement, when it comes to electricity. Our market here is 90% of our base load power comes from natural gas. I mean, solar and wind are able to lend a hand from time to time, but we phased out of coal onto natural gas, and then the federal government's approach would have had to phase us out of natural gas within 10 years. It was putting us in an incredible crisis situation, not only to be able to support our consumers currently, but also have future growth. So what I've observed is that in the past 2 years, because of the increasing demands for AI data centers, there's an impossibility of trying to maintain the old net zero power regs as well as be able to support that new and emerging industry. So I think that was maybe the first aha moment for the federal government, that they needed to switch course. And today's announcement is the result of that we have industry players who have confidence now that they can invest in natural gas production and natural gas power plants to be able to fuel that new industry. So that's a positive. As for the rest, I will happily answer your questions about that this evening. It's taken quite a few rounds to get to this point. We were hoping to have an announcement a little bit earlier. I know that the Prime Minister's plane was delayed, and so he's now in British Columbia today, and he'll be here this evening at 6 o'clock, where we can talk a little bit more about how we arrived at the announcement, but I'll save that one for a little bit later today.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Premier. But just slightly broader about your understanding of how the Liberal government accepts oil and gas development, and other larger projects as well. I know you touched that on in the past as well, but the change of tone and confidence, not just in electricity, but also in oil and gas.
Okay, so I would say what I've observed, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister has heard the same thing, is that when we go to our Asian markets and Asian partners, what we hear from them is that they want a reliable supplier of energy, especially with the Strait of Hormuz disruption, that they believe that if the Strait of Hormuz could be closed once, it can be closed again. And they want a reliable partner, and that partner is Canada. And the best way to get it to our Asian markets is from a new West Coast pipeline that can transport 1 million barrels a day. And the sense that I get is, as much as we can produce, they will buy from us. And I think the Prime Minister has received the same message. And so if we want to be a responsible partner in energy security, in security writ large with our trading partners, then I think the responsible thing for us to do is to be that reliable supplier. That's the point we've been raising for 3.5 years. And from what I saw from the Prime Minister's comments a couple of days ago, it sounds like that we're finally in alignment on that particular issue after 10 years of being at odds. And I think that's going to be good for Alberta, and it's going to be good for the country. It's going to be good for the world, frankly.
Awesome, and that's all the time we'll have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, let's take a short break. I'll be right back.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
blah 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 blah
Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah.
blah 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 blah
Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah.
Maverick News. No blah, blah, blah.
We have ongoing hostilities around the world. The war in Ukraine. I think it's escalating. Overnight massive attack on Kyiv. Tons of damage. People hunkered down inside, underground subway, seeking shelter overnight. And I think there were about 20 people killed, including, I think, 2 children as part of these attacks. So, yeah, this was one of the largest combined drone and missile strikes of the war on the capital of Ukraine. And 496 drones, 74 missiles, including a record 28 ballistic missiles, some hypersonic Zircon types, and they were all launched from multiple directions. Ukrainian air defense has intercepted or suppressed most, but 33 struck Kyiv, hitting 33 locations across all 10 districts. 27 people killed, as I checked the notes here, and over 90 injured, including children and first responders. Rescue operations continue at rubble sites at this hour. Death toll expected to rise tonight. Here's a video.
Один тяжко поранений. Велика крововтрата.
And it looks like everything that was targeted through all of this, residential areas. And some cultural buildings, but really no military targets. None. from all the reports that I've seen. And this being, one of the largest, if not the largest, single night attack on Ukraine's capital overnight. Ukraine hitting back hard, continuing their assaults on Russian energy infrastructure, hitting one of Russia's largest oil refineries overnight in the Novgorod region. Facility processes about 17 million tons of crude oil every single year. And this is what it looks like. Pretty clear this war's far from over, now into its 5th year. And the gas lineups inside Russia growing. Gasoline selling, if you can get it, in Crimea tonight, selling for about $13 per gallon. And they have, I think, still an ongoing ban against the sale of gasoline in Crimea for civilian purposes, all of it being rationed and directed toward military uses inside Crimea, where Ukraine has been very successful in cutting off supply lines by taking out pretty much all the bridges except for the Kerch Bridge, which is heavily damaged, and they can't get really heavy loads across to supply food, fuel. And that's why you're getting huge lineups like this, not just in Crimea, but in Russia as well. These are lineups. Gas station. I can't imagine that's real, but it appears to be real. How can that possibly be? I wouldn't think that all those people are waiting in line for gasoline, but you see they're all going in there to get gas. I don't know. But I guess if you need gas, you need gas. If you have no gas, that's what's going on over in Russia. And this is putting extreme pressure on Vladimir Putin. We're told that there are oligarchs there who are looking for some sort of change in leadership and direction on the war. A lot of rumors circulating tonight about maybe even a possible coup attempt being planned by somebody, which is why we're also seeing these reports of ramped up, really serious increase in security around Vladimir Putin. Some reports saying they have as many as 800 soldiers surrounding Putin in, wherever he might be in order to keep him safe. But in the fog of war, who knows if any of that is even real? It is very difficult to tell, but that's what's being said. But somehow, I'll say, reports like that tend to have grains of truth in them, if not outright truth. And over in Russia, I think that they have been doing their very best to suppress information, to prevent the citizens of Russia and the rest of the world from seeing the kinds of pressure that is really being realized inside Russia itself, on the Russian economy, the impact that it's having on people who, the citizens of Russia, the people, the economy in general. This is the strategy of Ukraine to put maximum pressure back on Russia, hit the energy infrastructure, hit the supply lines, try to cut the supplies off for the troops, make it unbearable and untenable inside Crimea, not to necessarily go in there with some sort of a boots on the ground invasion to try and take Crimea back, but to just make it so unpalatable and unlivable and unworkable so that the Russians can't actually use Crimea anymore. That's why you've seen so many people exiting Crimea a vacation playground for the middle class, upper middle class, and I think the more wealthy people in Russian society in Crimea, not to mention the people who have moved in there since the Russian takeover, when the war really started some years ago, well beyond prior to the full-scale military invasion. And so all of that seems to be having some real impact on the reality inside Russia. But overall, it looks like on the battleground, like on the front lines, there isn't really still a lot of movement. It's still something of a stalemate. So it's a war of wills at this point, and not to mention attrition. And this report coming out tonight saying that, did I lose the clip? No, it's still there. Telling us that for every one Ukrainian casualty killed, the Russians are losing 8 soldiers. That being reported by the New York Post tonight. And that's coming from other sources beyond that, including, I think, sources inside. Let's see. Russia is now losing 8 troops for every 1 Ukrainian soldier, they say, killed in the battlefield, with Moscow's army suffering 1.4 million casualties since the launch of the invasion in 2022. According to a new report, while much of the war saw the Russian-Ukraine casualty ratio at around 2-1, Moscow's losses have ballooned in 2026, largely in part because of Ukraine's advancing drone attacks, according to the Center for Strategic International Studies think tank. Russia now has 450,000 soldiers killed since the war began. Killed, not talking about just the wounded, and a total 9 times greater than all Soviet and Russian fatalities in all wars combined since World War II. A heavy price being paid, and while these attacks by Russia on Kyiv are clearly a strategy aimed at undermining morale, taking the trying to knock the will out of the Ukrainian people to get them to surrender rather than hitting military targets. They're going after civilian targets in order to just demoralize the public and then have them put pressure on the Ukrainian government. On the Russian side, the effect of the Ukrainian attack seems to be having very much the same kind of impact. It is an unpopular war in both countries, I think, but in Ukraine, they have more resolve because they're defending their home. In Russia, a lot of people, it seems, are drifting into the camp where they want this war to stop because they've suffered so many casualties. And with that many body bags coming home, it's not something that they can hide. Certainly not anymore. And then the oil refineries going up in smoke, you can't hide that stuff. No matter, it doesn't matter what laws you pass or what censorship you impose, people see it. And when you're getting the oil rain coming down, which is toxic, that's very real, and people see it firsthand. They're experiencing the effects of this war on the home front inside Russian territory, which is something that clearly Putin was not counting on when all of this began. And so it's clear this was a huge blunder, a mistake going in there, in my personal opinion. I'm editorializing just a little bit here now, but we need to take another break because I need to see if I can get that feed established for that news conference out in Calgary. We will be right back.
We are the Mavericks. Welcome to the Matrix, baby. Hope you like the view. We are the Mavericks. The world is watching.
Good news. I have the feed established, so we're ready to rock and roll with the news conference, which has not quite started yet, but the feed is live. We have it. We are jacked into the matrix, the news matrix, and ready to bring you live coverage from Calgary, where the Prime Minister Mark Carney will be with Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, giving us the details on something related to this pipeline project. And it seems like whatever it is, it's going to be substantive. I don't think they're going to all this trouble tonight to do this. And they're not doing this unless this is serious. And it looks like Alberta will just take the lead on this because they've been pushing so hard to get some sort of a pipeline deal done. It has been the number one issue, especially since the rise of the UCP to power under Danielle Smith, that they have to do something to keep the issue alive and move forward with this to appease the UCP base and just to keep the people of Alberta happy. They just can't sit back and hope or wait for private investors to come forward. Not on this, because there's been so much political controversy, momentum, so much political energy expended on this particular issue. So very clear that this has to move forward. Now, also, just going back to what's going on in Ukraine, with regard to the rumors of the coup, a possible coup against Vladimir Putin, I guess there's some mystery polymarket bettor who has placed a bet for around $400,000. This person, whoever it is, betting that Putin will not be the leader of Russia, won't be the president by the end of this year. Pretty crazy. A lot of rumors just in the last few days about a possible coup attempt against Vladimir Putin, and a lot of pressure being applied there. So not popular. Okay, we have people milling about. I can see the video feed. I won't put it up here, but they are assembling now, getting ready for this news conference. But I'm going to show you something from the Freedom 250 Great American State Fair. And this, I tried to see this through as much of a neutral lens as possible in order to bring what would appear to be or what would be fair, unbiased coverage. I kept saying, well, the people saying this whole thing is a failure, that may be politically biased. Maybe they're going to shoot video at low attendance times, but no. And I said, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but the middle is just failure. This so far has been an absolute flop. And I can't believe what I'm about to show you. Is this just bad luck, or is it terrible planning? Is it incompetent planning? I don't know. But what I'm about to show you just blows my mind. So you've got this event, and this looks to me like somebody could have been killed here. They're rehearsing, some people on stage rehearsing. I think there might be some kids involved here. I'm pretty sure these are kids, young people anyway, rehearsing for some sort of a performance. And the stage, there's some sort of an aerial, something up top, okay? And it falls. And if it had hit somebody, I think they could, not just injured, I think somebody could have been killed. They're very lucky. This is just a comedy of errors. Maybe they're not kids, maybe they're adults. Holy crap. Yeah, no shit. Excuse my language. Watch. Left-hand side of the screen. If that had hit somebody, they would have, oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. What the hell is going on there? This is not a partisan thing or a Trump derangement syndrome thing. This whole Freedom 250 American Great State Fair fiasco, that's what this thing has become. It's a crappy a crappy trade show thing where some states haven't even participated. You have basically, I've said this several times, it looks like the only attractions they have is it's like a Ferris wheel and a beanbag toss for kids, and then these booths set up which look like trade show booths in these little pavilions in the mall there. And nobody's coming out. I can understand why. It just, there isn't much to bring people out. It's just kind of a bleh event. And you're seeing stuff like this going on. I guess they have a baptism pool there. It's part of a permanent installation from some faith group, but it's been so hot. Some woman went into the tent where this thing is located, I guess, and went for a swim, which is just, it's comical in my view. I haven't seen the video, but I guess that happened. And it's just, I have to look up the video. I did go to look earlier today when I had just a moment, pretty busy through the day today, but I did look for video or an image of the baptism pool, and it looks like something that is purchased at Costco. It's just so, that's America. This is how they're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the country. My gosh, what a disappointment. And that's because I would love for America to celebrate in a really big way. Most powerful country in the world, the big economic power, the big military power, supposed to be a beacon of hope and freedom for the whole world. And that's the best they can do. I don't know, man. Something's wrong. Okay, this is them setting up for the big announcement coming up. And obviously they are still getting ready. So media moving in, getting their microphones and so on in place on the podium. So let me just take a short break. I have other stuff to bring you while we wait for the Prime Minister and Premier to show up. I will be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so they're still getting ready over there. They're running a little behind. I'm not surprised. I was expecting that. Other news on the international front, reports out of Cuba tonight that they are ready. They are in position. They've braced themselves for a possible U.S. invasion of some kind, maybe. Cuba saying they are ready to fight a war. And if they need to, they will fight back against any kind of U.S. Military invasion or attack. So there's that. And that also, for me, very disappointing. I just don't understand why. And the blockade there remains in place. The blockade that they say isn't really a blockade. They're not letting oil in. And then Rubio saying that it's Venezuela that has decided not to make oil available to Cuba anymore. So it's all Venezuela's fault. But who controls Venezuela now? The Trump administration. Trump controls Venezuela. So and it was all about the oil. Trump has said as much. They are running Cuba and the oil industry there now. So if they're not sending oil, Venezuela decides not to send it. That's a direct policy, I would say, coming straight out of the White House. They're responsible for it. And we have this ongoing escalating humanitarian crisis inside Cuba, which has gone on for months now, because you have this blockade. They're not getting energy. They've got widespread blackouts, power outages affecting not just people and everyday life. It's affecting hospitals. Infant mortality reports spiking. United Nations condemning what the United States is doing there, saying that this is a violation of international law. Because they're at war with communism. That's what Trump keeps saying. He's at war with communism. Communism. What is communism? It's is it a budget issue? They don't like the way the money is spent. Too much socialism. These are policy things. I don't like any kind of any kind of authoritarian government, whether it's a fascistic government, a dictatorship, a communist government. But I've been to Cuba, and you might not like the way the country is run. You might not like what they're doing there. But to do it this way, to make the people suffer, distasteful is maybe the softest word I can come up with to express my disappointment with Donald Trump and what he is doing there. My editorial opinion on that. What else is going on tonight? So we've got that, and in Lithuania also. This is, I think, maybe a significant development. They've lifted their nuclear ban, which for the first time. And so this means this may pave the way for nuclear weapons, maybe NATO, defensive nuclear weapons, whatever, to be positioned inside Lithuania. So the nuclear saber rattling continues. That they haven't approved that yet, but they've lifted the ban on having nuclear weapons on Lithuanian soil, which means they may end up putting nuclear weapons on Lithuanian soil. You're not lifting the ban unless maybe you're planning on doing something, I would say. But that's a new development tonight as well. So, and the coup rumors, and what else do we have going on tonight? Well, I'm just going to check in on Calgary and make sure we've got the up to the second live feed coming in here. So don't go away. We will be right back.
Someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
You know, someone very profoundly once said,
We are back, still waiting for this news conference to start. They are late. I just also wanted to just mention something from last night. And maybe you guys can help me out with this. I made comment on comments being made in the chat last night, specifically from Rosemary Mack. Now, I went back and I looked again at those comments, and I will say that, well, I was pretty critical and harsh. And then as I was looking at it, because Maureen, also in the chat, said, I don't see anything wrong with what was said, and that made me question what I did. So I just want to say, as I read those comments, I saw that depending on how you interpret them, you could take away an assessment of what was said about 3 different ways. And so it's possible that I misinterpreted or took it the wrong way. And if I did, and I'm going to assume that I did, I'm going to say I'm sorry. Because if Rosemary Mack wasn't being as caustic and it was not attacking in the way that I thought that she was, then I apologize. And I don't know if Rosemary Mack has come back tonight or if she will ever come back, but if anyone knows who this person is, and I have never had personal contact with Rosemary Mack from the chat last night. I've seen her in there regularly for a long time, in my view, and I don't watch the chat that much. So, but I've just seen a lot of what appeared to be negative comments, but it's possible I've taken this stuff the wrong way. And if so, I apologize. In fact, I'll just assume that I'm wrong and say that I am sorry. Such is the danger of dipping in and out of a chat where any kind of a text message can be taken out of context and read the wrong way. You can't really know what the emotion is or sometimes what people really intend when they're typing something out. So I just throw that out there. And if anybody has any comments or you want to send me a message and let me know if you've got a different view on that, I'm all ears and appreciate your feedback. Still waiting for this news conference. What else we got going on? Oh, Trump. This whole, it should be a scandal. I don't think that it is. it's a political liability for him. At this point, the $1 billion plus that he made off the cryptocurrencies alone, that is, if nothing else, it should be a political embarrassment for the guy. But the Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump's brokerage accounts made large stock trades around Liberation Day. I'm telling you, man, he controls the levers on the economy. And when you do that, the temptation to make huge money corruptly, I would say illegally, unless you're the president, in which case it's not a crime if you're the president, Richard Nixon, a.k.a. This stinks, frankly. This stinks. Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump's brokerage accounts made large stock trades around Liberation Day tariff announcements and pause. His investment accounts bought 327 stocks worth up to $12.8 million on April 8th, 2025, the day before he announced a tariff pause on Truth Social. And the trades followed his April 2nd Liberation Day tariff announcement that caused a stock market crash with additional buying and selling on April 3rd and 4th. The trades were disclosed over a year late, resulting in a, get this, $200 fine. Whoop-de-doo. Small price to pay for an awfully big payoff. Well, it is becoming a political liability and certainly giving ammunition to his political opponents, and I would say justifiably so, regardless of your political views or where you land on the political spectrum.
Do you remember last year when Trump announced his massive across-the-board tariffs? He had a big old cardboard chart to show it, very modern of him. He called it Liberation Day. It actually led to a stock market crash. Now, that Liberation Day announcement was on April 2nd of last year. And Trump's financial disclosures show that he made 327 stock purchases 6 days later, on April 8th.
Wow. And you see this, it's a pattern, too, around everything going on in Iran. Pattern where he makes an announcement. We've got a peace deal around the end of the week, Thursday, Friday. Then over the weekend, things start to fall apart by the time you get to Monday. There is no deal. And the price of oil has gone up or down, and the stock markets are affected by it all. And it looks like massive trades being made on those dates, too, in advance of the announcements being made and knowing how that's going to affect prices. The thing is, this is really bad for the economy because when that kind of thing happens, you get massive exchanges of money where people make money, but they're only making money. They're not making stuff. There's no corresponding productivity within the economy to actually pay for the money that is made, or in some cases lost. It results in, serious loss to some people in the economy. It's alarming stuff, and I don't know why people on the U.S. side are not more upset about it. In eras past, really, when you think about it, Richard Nixon lost the presidency in a scandal for far less than what we've seen unfold with the Trump administration. But Rosemary Mack, she's a defender of Trump, so as far as I can tell, unless I'm taking that out of context, but yeah, I just don't understand the mindset. And then Trump posting today on Truth Social that as a meme of himself as a doctor. I guess he's, and that's all related to TDS. He's saying, I'll see if I can find it for you. I don't want to let go of this feed, and I want to keep going on here tonight because I'd like to pick up this live feed out in California. Okay, let's do a Truth Social scroll, and that'll help bring us up to date here tonight on all things Trump. Okay, here we go. Here's Donald Trump's Truth Social account. Peter Navarro, what's he got to say?
In July of 1776, King George III still towered over New York City, not in person, in lead. At Bowling Green, near the tip of Manhattan,
Oh, we've had internet issues here again
stood a
tonight.
gilded 4,000-pound statue of King George on horseback, dressed like a Roman emperor. It had been erected just 6 years earlier as a monument to British power. But by the summer of 1776, Americans no longer saw majesty in this statue. They saw tyranny. On July 9, 1776, George Washington gathered his troops in New York and had the newly adopted Declaration of Independence read aloud. The words had barely settled before soldiers, sailors, and patriots surged down Broadway to Bowling Green and toppled the King George statue. While the crowd saw tyranny toppled, Connecticut patriot Oliver Wolcott saw bullets. 4,000 pounds of lead bullets for a Continental Army Wolcott knew would be desperate for ammunition. So Wolcott had the shattered pieces of King George loaded onto boats and shipped to Connecticut. From there, ox carts hauled the remains of King George more than 60 miles over rough country roads to Wolcott's home in Litchfield. And in the Wolcott family orchard, a shed became a foundry.
Okay, I'm getting
His
bored
wife-
of this. Sorry, just I am. Yeah, I don't. He's not a great actor. Sorry, Mr. Navarro. So I'm scrolling away. What else do we have that will entertain us tonight on the Trump Truth Social scroll? The United States spends more money on NATO than any other country by far to protect them without getting any benefit from so doing. U.S. $999 billion, United Kingdom $90.5 billion, France $66.5. La, 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 la. Ridiculous, he says. I don't know. I don't believe anything he says, so, maybe not. Oh, here's the meme of him as the doctor.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with TDS? The symptoms can be relentless. Fortunately, I'm Dr. Trump, and I have a treatment plan. Let's hear what some of my patients have to say.
I have been suffering for over a decade.
What is it with this internet? Bad. Freezing. Resume, please.
And after listening,
Awful. Just awful. Come on. I think we've got audio coming through now on the feed out of Calgary.
listening to Dr.
Testing
Trump,
the audio,
I
so
can see some
momentarily
results.
We should begin very soon.
Man, I've been suffering for years.
And I apologize for the freezing.
I really didn't believe that was help out there. That was when I came
The internet. Again tonight.
across this video on TV.
I really thought I was a lost cause. This was going to affect me for the rest of my life. But after using the treatment plan, I can see a difference.
I really wasn't sure I could.
Wow. So sorry about the internet.
Help some of these people. They were so far gone, I wasn't really sure.
I don't know why we're having so much trouble.
I had no idea how much this was affecting my life. My work is slowed down. I'm hardly
terrible,
recognizable anymore. I just needed help. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep, constantly angry. I made everyone miserable around me.
I feel like I've aged 20 years in the last 2 years. I've been so concerned, I was really starting to worry about my future.
The treatment is simple. Turn off. Fake news. Say your prayers, and if you ever feel anxious, just have a Diet Coke like me, and you're going to see a remarkable difference in your life.
That is funny. It is funny. That's what I wanted to show you tonight from that Truth Social scroll. My goodness. Okay. What else do we have going on? What's going on in with Iran? I did prepare information on it. I did get some points prior to coming on tonight. And I've also got this stuff on MK Ultra. So yeah, so we've got the negotiations, such as they are, still ongoing in the past 24 hours. We've got these indirect technical talks happening between the U.S. and Iran. They concluded in Doha, Qatar, with mediators reporting some positive progress, they say, on implementing the June Memorandum of Understanding that ended major hostilities, that didn't end major hostilities. They've still been shooting at each other. It's just a disaster, in my humble opinion, and backed up by empirical evidence, because you can see the damage. The discussions took place through Qatari and Pakistani mediators, and they have focused, I guess, mainly on resuming safe commercial shipping through the Strait and other measures, including the unfreezing of Iranian assets. The issue of nuclear weapons is still not on the agenda in this round of talks, but they were told that they're supposed to address that pretty soon. Vice President Vance has described the talks as going well, and Trump called the meetings very good. He says that denuclearization efforts with Iran are advancing. Both sides agreeing to continue the dialogue. The next round expected after Iran's upcoming state funeral processions for the late Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has issued a statement warning on, just yesterday, I believe, that Tehran would deliver an immediate and powerful response to any threat against the people of Iran, territory, or leadership. And he referenced a U.S. commitment to restrain Israel, adding that if the U.S. ignores that, Iran will school them. So I'm glad that the peace talks are going well. No new military strikes or major incidents have been reported in the past day. Tensions remain elevated, though, as Iran prepares for large-scale funeral ceremonies, which begin tomorrow in Tehran, with burial set for July 9th. So this whole situation stems, of course, from the Iran war, which began in late February with the United States and Israeli strikes on Iran. And then we got this, what they call a fragile ceasefire, which has not been a ceasefire at all, because they keep shooting at each other. And you have this interim agreement, so it's called, in place since about the middle of last month, and the 60-day window for a broader peace deal, 60-day window for negotiations. Okay, the audio feed going hot here now, and we are ready to rock and roll. Here we go, live from Calgary.
Everyone, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you very much for making the time. Sorry to be a bit late. I know there is a lot on in Calgary. Stampede. Some of us are better dressed than others. I was sorry, by the way, let me start by just with a quick apologies. The weather, biblical weather last night in Ottawa meant that I couldn't make it to Edmonton, couldn't make it to Mill Woods for Canada Day, celebrate Canada Day, but I am thrilled to be here in Calgary today to celebrate Canada Strong Day. 3 weeks ago, Premier and I had a discussion after this, immediately after, but 3 weeks ago in France, the G7 leaders called on Canada to provide the reliable energy that the world needs to realize our full potential as an energy superpower. This morning I was in BC, I was in Vancouver with Premier Eby. We announced a landmark agreement that does a number of things, seizes opportunity through major energy projects, new trade corridors, critical minerals developments, projects that will help move Canadian energy to new markets, new partners around the world. Cet après-midi, je me suis entretenu avec le président Marcos des Philippines, un pays de 120 millions d'habitants, l'un des marchés émergents les plus florissants dans le monde, et nous sommes sur le point de conclure 2 accords importants qui augmenteront près de 200% nos échanges commerciaux bilatéraux d'ici 2035, et nous avons eu une discussion très complexe, très fondamentale sur les occasions d'énergie d'arbitrage énergie canadien. Now, this evening, I'm very pleased to join Premier Smith here in Calgary to announce new measures that will unlock Alberta's energy for the world. These measures will build the strength of our entire country. They will take control of our future. They will bolster our sovereignty. Today's announcements, and this is a lowball figure. You don't normally get lowball figures from politicians. This is a lowball figure. Canadians' announcements will catalyze well over $200 billion in direct investments in Canada, create over 175,000 new jobs across the country, and we are just getting started. These benefits will be shared widely, including with Indigenous peoples as full partners, and they will create resources for the social programs on which Canadians rely. This is cooperative federalism at work. It's the kind of unity and collaboration that Albertans and Canadians rightly expect. They expect it on principle, and they expect it because it's required for Canada to prosper in a rapidly changing world. Parce que c'est la bonne réponse à une crise énergétique sur 3 niveaux. L'abordabilité, la sécurité et le climat. Nos alliés le reconnaissent et les Canadiens et Canadiens le savent. You asked for it, we promised it, now we are delivering. Because when we work together, Canada controls its future. This is a new approach that helps us reach our full potential. One that builds in partnership, the federal government, Alberta, British Columbia, partnership with territories, partnership with Indigenous peoples, partnership with the private sector. Indigenous peoples, full partners in development, operating, and equity ownership. We've agreed, or at least I think that's what's in the submission that I may get momentarily, that the best route for a new pipeline is one that goes through one that already exists, south through the Trans Mountain Corridor to our Pacific coast, the gateway to the world's fastest growing markets. We've already agreed to reform carbon markets so they promote real emissions. We've already agreed to substantial methane reductions and to new measures, new incentives and reforms so that power markets can grow sustainably and affordably, and this being Alberta, significantly. The federal government will maintain the tanker ban to protect Canada's coastlines and precious habitats, and consistent with the MOU as a prerequisite for the pipeline, the Government of Canada, the Government of Alberta, and the Oil Sands Alliance, the 5 companies in the Oil Sands Alliance, have now agreed on the terms to launch the Pathways Project, the world's largest carbon capture and utilization and storage project, which together with other emission reduction commitments in the agreement will achieve 16 million tons of emissions reductions per year, or the equivalent of taking 90% of the cars in Alberta off the road. Critically, what we've agreed is that the time for action is now. We will refer a submission that I may receive, Alberta's West Coast Pipeline Project proposal immediately to the Major Projects Office. Consultations will begin immediately with Indigenous communities, relevant provinces and territories to determine listing under the Building Canada Act by October 1st, as per our agreement. Cet accord est bien plus qu'une entente entre 2 gouvernements. Il donne aux entreprises la certitude dont elles ont besoin pour investir et bâtir. This is more than just an accord. It's also an approach that gives certainty to our businesses to build. Canada and Alberta will be equal partners in this project. As I said, meaningful ownership stakes available for Indigenous communities. We'll also benefit from Indigenous contracting and employment alongside funding to strengthen that capacity. The Trans Mountain Corporation will plan and construct the pipeline. They will work closely with Pembina Pipeline Corporation, who will bring its private sector expertise, its capital discipline to the construction and operation of the pipeline. And I'd like to thank the CEO, Scott Burrows, for his leadership and his presence. We are all living through a moment of unprecedented global volatility. Our role as government is to be a catalyst. Part of being a catalyst is to bring greater certainty, reduce risks facing private capital so there's more opportunity and more energy when shovels hit the ground. Ensemble, l'oléoduc et Pathways vont créer plus de 100 000 nouveaux emplois à haut salaire en Alberta, en Colombie-Britannique et plus que ça à travers le pays. Des emplois pour des travailleurs qualifiés, des ingénieurs et des techniciens canadiens. De vraies opportunités pour les entreprises, les contracteurs et des travailleurs autochtones. Now, we've started as we mean to go on. We will continue to work together, Albertans, British Columbians, with industry and Indigenous partners at one table instead of many, to deliver. The head of the IEA said a few weeks ago, he repeated it I think a couple days ago, that Canada has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an opportunity that will determine our future, an opportunity that will deliver prosperity that will spread across our country. Canada, Alberta, has what the world wants. Canada, Alberta, is a trusted, reliable partner in a world that's anything but. And the initiatives we're announcing today will build a stronger, more resilient, more sustainable Canada. A Canada that's worth fighting for, because we are stronger together. And as today demonstrates, we are building Canada strong for all. Thank you very much. And it's now my pleasure to give you the Premier of Alberta, Daniel Smith. Dan?
Well, thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you all for joining us today, along with my ministers, Brian Jean for Energy and Critical Minerals, as well as Rajan Sani, who is our Minister for Indigenous Relations and is going to be very busy over the coming months. I would also like to thank Trans Am Piping for hosting us, And today marks an important step forward for Alberta and for Canada. Beneath our feet here in Alberta, we stand on oil reserves valued at more than $9 trillion. This resource wealth presents our nation with boundless opportunities. Developing these resources would equate to hundreds of billions of dollars in government revenue that could be used to support core social programs like healthcare and education, bolster Canada's national security commitments under NATO, and unlock economic prosperity for Indigenous peoples. It would enable governments across the country to invest in the priorities that matter most while creating hundreds of thousands of jobs and driving unprecedented economic growth across the entire country. This is transformational wealth, an opportunity neither Canada nor Alberta can afford to leave unrealized, which is why I'm happy to stand here today and say that Alberta's government has formally filed our West Coast oil pipeline submission to the Federal Major Projects Office for Project of National Interest listing under the Building Canada Act. I'm also pleased to announce Alberta's government is entering into a partnership with Trans Mountain Corporation and Pembina Pipeline. Yes, Scott, this is the second time you've been with me today. I was surprised we didn't get any questions on this one this morning at the earlier one. And nice to see you as well, Kevin. Along with the federal government to execute this vital nation-building project. This submission is the result of months of intensive work, bringing together world-class technical expertise, engineering analysis, economic modeling, and early engagement with Indigenous communities and partners. After studying both northern and southern route options, Alberta selected a southern route from Bruderheim, Alberta, to a deepwater VLCC-capable port terminal on BC's southwest coast. With the help of our technical advisory group made up of industry experts, we determined that this route offers the fastest, most cost-effective path to expanding Canada's energy exports. Following the existing Trans Mountain pipeline corridor, this project builds on existing infrastructure. It reflects feedback from Indigenous groups and the government of British Columbia, reduces regulatory barriers, given it would not be subject to the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act, and gets Canada's most valuable natural resource to global markets faster. The proposal also includes an equity ownership partnership and opportunity for Indigenous communities, and more details on this will be shared in the coming months ahead. There is no doubt whatsoever that this pipeline is a project of national interest, one that will help connect Alberta oil to global markets and strengthen our country's economic future for decades. The West Coast oil pipeline will transport more than 1 million barrels of oil per day to Canada's West Coast and strengthen access to growing Asian markets, helping to meet Alberta's goal to double oil production to 8 million barrels per day over the next 10 to 15 years. This project will be built safely and efficiently through an unprecedented public-private partnership between both the Alberta and federal governments with Pembina Pipelines, along with First Nations. And make no mistake, in addition to the substantial new royalties generated from the oil needed to fill this pipe, oil pipelines like this are very profitable. The profits from this pipeline will generate billions in revenues over the coming decades for the provincial and federal governments and will enrich Indigenous communities that choose to partner with us. And speaking of oil royalties, Alberta's government is also finalizing another agreement with the federal government and the Oil Sands Alliance to significantly expand oil sands production and advance Pathways, the world's largest carbon capture and storage project. Doubling oil
I apologize for the frozen video.
Oil sands production is a big task. Doing so in the most environmentally responsible manner is an even bigger task, but this agreement will allow us to achieve both. Our oil sands partners will have the incentives they need to launch a super cycle of production growth in Canada's most valuable deposit of natural resources, and Pathways will make Alberta bitumen among the lowest emission heavy oil globally. We've certainly come a long way from talk of phasing out Alberta's oil and gas, haven't we? And together these efforts position Canada to deliver energy that the world needs, responsibly and competitively. Obviously, it will take time, and there is much work ahead of all of us, but I say to all people across Alberta and across Canada, we will get the job done. The window of opportunity is open now. Recent global events have made it clear that Canada's safe and reliable sources of oil, gas, critical minerals are vital to the world's economy. As the Prime Minister knows, the recent communique from the G7 meetings in France specifically referenced Canada's opportunity to be an energy superpower to support global demand. We must go all in and seize it. Canada cannot lose another decade or more to delay and inaction. We've heard this very clearly from our international partners from Japan, South Korea, India, Malaysia, and Indonesia, as well as from across Europe. The message is consistent. The world is asking Canada to step up and provide a more stable, democratic, and reliable energy supply that countries around the globe are looking for. This is not just another energy project, it's a nation-building project that will unlock wealth and opportunity for millions of people across the country and provide desperately needed energy to millions more across the globe. The West Coast Pipeline, doubling oil sands production growth, and the Pathways Project together will define Alberta's and Canada's economic future. And now let's work together and build this pipeline. Thank you, and we'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Premier. Thank you, Prime Minister. Merci à vous deux. We'll now turn to questions. Maintenant, on va commencer les questions. We'll take 10 minutes of questions, 10 minutes de questions. First question, Wiki.
Maybe to both of you, but what guarantees, if any, have been made to Pembina regarding this being a viable investment by both governments?
Well, I would say that one of the things that we knew we had to do in starting off down this pathway was to de-risk the project. There are many, many pipeline projects that got underway and for one reason or another got stalled out and abandoned the regulatory process after spending either hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. That was the environment we found ourselves in. So I would say that having both the federal government and the provincial government at the table as partners with Pembina, they give us the certainty that it is a financially viable project from a private sector perspective, and we give them the certainty that because we're partnering with them, that it's going to get built in a timely way. Did you want to comment, Prime Minister?
Well, the first thing, I agree with everything, obviously, the Premier just said. There's some synergies from the fact of having TMC as a partner in an existing route. But there's what Pembina is bringing is expertise, capital discipline. I mean, they're renowned for their capital discipline, operating expertise and discipline, and that enriches it. But decisions will be made by all partners as it moves forward, as this process moves forward. It's financially viable, it's attractive, it unlocks enormous value for the country and value for the equity holders, which will include both our governments, federal government through TMX or TMC, as well as Indigenous partners.
Next question, prochaine question.
Yeah, so I guess since it's a public-private partnership for both, and if Prime Minister Carney could also answer in French would be nice. What portion will come out of Albertan or Canadian taxpayers' pocket?
I mean, that remains to be negotiated, and that'll be one of the things that we take away. We wanted to get the high-level agreement of the partnership, and of course, it'll be the federal government, the provincial government, Indigenous stake, as well as Pembina, so it'll be negotiated over time. But what I would say is that when you look at some of the recent projections that were done by ATB about what 1.5 million barrels of additional oil sands production would do for our country, this would be 1 million barrels. They talked about $30 billion. This would be $20 billion per year, every year, for as long as the pipeline operates. And so those will be the kind of revenue figures that we're looking at. And then the ownership stakes will be negotiated on that basis once we look at finalize the terminal point, finalize the route, finalize the costs.
Et peut-être ce serait plus utile de répondre seulement en français. C'est pas une question d'une dépense fédérale, ce sera un investissement. Un investissement du gouvernement du Canada fait par la coopération TMC, premier point. Deuxièmement, il faut reconnaître que maintenant, l'investissement de TMX qui existe, l'oléoduc qui existe, c'est comme Madame la Première ministre vient d'indiquer, c'est très rentable. C'est très rentable pour tous les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Et ce sera une autre oléoduc qui sera rentable. Alors, pas une dépense, c'est un investissement pour le bénéfice de tous les Canadiens et les Canadiens. Avant les rendements, effectivement, les rendements d'une augmentation de la production de produits.
Next question, prochaine question.
Hi. Have any producers committed firmly to utilizing the potential pipeline through a sort of preliminary open season process? And if so, who and how much?
One of the conversations we were having with the Pathways group of companies, and remember there are only 5 oil sands companies in that oil sands alliance, was how we do that dual investment. One, not only the pipeline, but also the investment in the Pathways project to reduce emissions, but also the investment that is going to significantly increase our oil sands production so that we can fill this pipeline and others that are out there being proposed. So that process will come a little bit later when it comes to commitments, but the fact that they were walking this pathway with us to make sure that we had a 3-part agreement, we'll continue our discussions with the Oil Sands Alliance and making sure that we have the right market conditions so that they can expand their production. But that's also one of the additional agreements that will stem from the agreement that we have today.
If I may, I'll just supplement, because there is, as I mentioned in my remarks, there is a MOU, protocol d'accord, with the 5 Pathways Alliance members, which is a tripartite agreement, the 5, Government of Alberta, Government of Canada, which, as the Premier just indicated the commitments to related to Pathways, as well as the intention for the expansion consistent with what would be as part of this pipeline, but also it explicitly mentions the TMX expansion. So that's an MOU, as the Premier indicates. As with all these things, we move forward, but that's a very important commitment. And I'll just make one final observation for those who are wondering about the steps in this. We had our original MOU in November, which gave the intents of where we were going to go. That moved to an implementation agreement, a number of commitments that we made as governments. But then there's the private sector both to come forth, as Pembina has as a partner at this phase of the project.
My apologies again for the freezing.
And for the Oil Sands Alliance companies to make the commitments that they're making as part of this MOU. So it moves from the public sphere into the private sphere in this broader partnership. The next phase is through the Major Projects Office and the consultations and partnership with Indigenous partners. Thank you.
Next question. Megan Podkins with The Logic. I think for months we'd heard, in some cases from you, Premier, that the benefits to the northern route had better shipping economics. There was there are other kinds of permitting benefits to going in a northbound route. You've settled or agreed on a southbound route. Is there not a concern or a risk here that we're trading a more commercially viable project for a politically palatable one?
I can tell you that we looked at both projects, and in fact, the southern route had key advantages of using an existing pipeline route, existing established relationships with the Indigenous partners and potential partners along that line, as well as the ability to reduce the amount of time to get it to market. And anyone in the private sector will tell you it's those delays that are to be in production and to be earning revenue, which is one of the big factors for consideration. So as we looked at this one and realized that they're fairly comparable when it comes to the amount of dollars that would have to be outlaid, but we'd likely be able to build this one a couple or more years faster. That factored into the decision making. I still think that there are advantages to talking with First Nations in the north about ways that we can expand the use of the Port-au-Prince Rupert. I know that Minister Sawney has already spoken with dozens and dozens of Indigenous leaders, and I think we've opened up that conversation for us to be able to talk about future partnerships. But when we looked at this one, the time to market, the efficiency of using the existing line, the established Indigenous relationships, it seemed like this made the best sense economically as well.
If I may just supplement on that, agree with the very important aspect of de-risking in time, being clear about, as the Premier just said, time to market. We're also, goes back to what the G7 asked, what we hear from Asian partners, what I heard from the President of the Philippines today. There's an energy security issue today. And so the interest is how we move towards that. And if I could broaden it and then hand to you, sir, is of course, Canada's providing a variety of energy solutions, and another form of those energy solutions is LNG. Coming through Port-au-Prince Rupert, Kitimat, and I'll just refer to the Coastal First Nations comments today, and the consistency of what we're doing today with a series of energy projects moving forward to provide solutions. Thank you.
We'll have time for one last question. Dernière question.
Jeff Jones, Globe and Mail. So after 7 months, this project will now require government support in terms of equity. Why do you think that it remains too risky for private sector to run with it by itself?
I would say that we did have a number of projects, and I can elaborate on them. I mean, we did have Northern Gateway that had all of its approvals, and they were then canceled. We did have Keystone XL, who had all of its approvals and were starting to build pipelines across the border, and a presidential permit was canceled. We had Energy East that was $1 billion into a regulatory approval process and couldn't see the way to a finish line, so it was canceled. So we have pipeline companies that have literally spent billions of dollars in recent years on failed regulatory approval processes. That's the environment we're finding ourselves in. And so it does take some work, I think, to make sure that the private sector proponents understand that this is a real process. There's a real commitment on the part of all three parties, myself, as well as the Premier of British Columbia, as well as the Prime Minister, to get this project to the finish line. So what the share of the private sector stake will be, that remains to be seen. Maybe over time, as more and more certainty comes in, maybe we'll be talking with Scott about him wanting to take on a larger and larger share. But we want to make sure that a company knows that we're walking this path with them, so that we can get it to the end. And I won't speak for the Prime Minister, but I did notice that they have already received a over $1 billion dividend payment from the Trans Mountain pipeline. And so it seems to me that once you get through the construction process and you start earning revenue, it is an incredibly lucrative type of infrastructure that will benefit taxpayers. That was our consideration as well, but I'll turn it over to the Prime Minister.
First off, let me thank the Premier for making that point. It is, because it's an important point. And I referenced this earlier in one of the first questions about the profitability of TMX. TMX, de-risked, up and running, now is very profitable. And it's returning real cash to Canadians that is supporting social programs, supporting other things. And this is one of the things we're conscious of in terms of TMX, sovereign fund, other aspects, a much bigger answer. But let me make a fundamental point, which is, and I started my comments early in my comments, I said we were lowballing the scale of investment. Part of the reason I was lowballing the scale of investment is I wasn't accounting for all of the upstream investment in oil and gas. So a series of announcements, some of it's port infrastructure in BC, which is as much for other commodities, it's for goods exports, enormous opportunity, other logistics exports, clean energy investments in British Columbia, critical mineral investments beyond. There's a series of investments which we're not counting, which the broader MOU will unlock on interties, on gas turbines, potentially nuclear investment, data center investment, a series of other things. We are talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. The vast, vast majority of that is going to come directly from the private sector. The measures we're taking are catalytic in order to help unlock all of that. Dawn Farrell's here, and I'm going to finish with this. I want to thank Dawn for her leadership of the Major Projects Office, right out of here of Calgary. And what Dawn does is help to ensure that what the federal government is doing is creating the conditions to unlock that private investment. So there's enormous private investment that's going to come. And as the Premier said at the start, as I said at the start, and I'll finish, and that's for the benefit of all Albertans and all Canadians, including the fact that it will provide resources to government to support our vital social programs, educate our children, and move forward as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If we could just do the quick photo with the proposal book. Right in front of the podium would be great.
Okay.
So it looks to me like that's some sort of real progress. I think this probably is going to get built one way or another. This being, as Carney said, a catalyst to bringing private investment into this, but the Alberta government taking the initiative here as the project lead on this, I guess, and the route of the pipeline being a sticking point throughout all of this. Now it seems that has been resolved. So you have a pathway to the West Coast through the existing Trans Mountain pipeline corridor, and that means that it will come to the West Coast along this into the southern coast of BC ultimately, leaving the northern coastal BC tanker ban in place. And now we just have to see if this actually comes to fruition. It will be interesting to see what Pierre Poilievre has to say tomorrow. I don't think we'll get comment from him tonight. It may happen, but whatever happens, we'll bring you his comments here on Maverick News tomorrow evening when our coverage of this new pipeline proposal, because it still isn't an approved, totally approved thing. But yeah, we're pretty darn close to getting the approvals in place and moving forward with this thing. This is not just window dressing. It is a significant step forward. And because they've addressed the First Nations consultation issue, they have existing relationships with those First Nations communities where the Trans Mountain Pipeline already runs through. And now this new pipeline will, I guess, run in parallel to that. So they're already living with this kind of existence and the benefits that come as well from having a pipeline run through those First Nations territories. And there will be an equity program in place as well. And Carney says that the consultations will begin immediately with First Nations, another stumbling block to getting a new pipeline built. And if the pipeline is built, that could, I think it will, address the major concern, the major driving issue behind the whole Alberta separatist movement, at least for the majority of Albertans. Others have a whole list of other grievances that they will continue to cling to. And I'm sure that whatever happens, the separatist movement out in Alberta won't just disappear, but this will go a long way toward subduing and maybe bringing to at least bringing an end to the separatist momentum as we head into this referendum on maybe having a referendum in the fall. So a significant achievement today politically, both in Alberta, BC, and Canada-wide through the federal government. I will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.